Hi everybody, it's Az here from HeelvsBabyface with Emergency Az number 7. Now, Emergency Az videos, they are raw, reactionary type of videos to breaking news within the gaming world. Been a little bit WoW-centric recently, gonna stick with the World of Warcraft on this behalf because last night some news broke about a change to PvP that they're going to bring into patch 6.2.1, which is the patch where you're going to get to flap your wings and fly as well. So what is the change? Well, they're going to bring in something called Mercenary Mode. What's Mercenary Mode? Well, let's hear it from the horse's mouth themselves. This is how Blizzard describe it, okay? They say, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Oof. And soon you'll be able to do just that. In an upcoming patch, we'll be adding a feature that allows you to act as a mercenary for the opposite faction in PvP. Whenever your faction has experienced a long wait time to get into Ashran or unrated battlegrounds, agents of the enemy faction will appear in your base in Ashran. These agents will allow you to enter Ashran or battlegrounds disguised as an enemy player and actually fight as the opposite faction. Right, so that's what's going to happen. You are going to be able to fight for the opposing faction. The irony, of course, is they've put a picture of an orc with a human mask on, when in reality, all that's going to happen is Alliance are going to be able to fight for the Horde. Because Alliance are currently massively outnumbering the Horde in Ashran. So that's essentially what it's going to be. Just Alliance, who are winning everything, Ashran-wise anyway, at the moment, going over to the Horde and then losing. But the main crux of this, of course, is this is a way to try and alleviate queue times. This is a way to really bring down, because at the moment, the Horde can't get enough players, and they're just losing all the time. And the Alliance are winning all the time. And they are just queuing for hours and hours and hours to get into Ashran. It's a horrible, ridiculous situation at the moment. Let's go further into what Blizzard say. When you compete as a mercenary, you'll still earn all the same rewards that you would have by winning or losing as your own faction, with the exception of faction-specific achievements. You'll also have your race automatically changed into one appropriate for the opposite faction while you're still inside the battleground or Ashran. Perhaps more importantly, however, you'll experience much shorter queue times, as our matchmaking system will be able to fill up groups much quicker. So this is essentially what it is. This is a band-aid to fix a much, much greater issue. This is just an attempt to push those queue times down, and it isn't really anything more than that. We'll discuss further in the video other aspects of problems with PvP. Our goal with Mercenary Mode is to allow players who want to participate in Ashran or unrated battlegrounds the ability to do so without having to wait through long queues, while still maintaining the spirit of the core Alliance versus Horde fantasy. We'll be testing this feature soon on the PTR and look forward to hearing your feedback. Well, feedback's going to be very sparse, Blizzard, because there isn't going to be anyone on the PTR to test it. The PTR is virtually empty, and people actually doing Ashran on the PTR are kind of like 3. There's like 3 people doing it. So that's not going to kick in the requirement to have one of these people turn up at the base. They're going to have to forcefully do it if they want to test it to any sort of degree. So if I were Blizzard, I would just stick the 2 people in both faction hubs in Ashran, and then just allow players to talk to them and you know, convert to the other side and just go that way. Otherwise, this ain't going to get tested on PTR whatsoever, and we're not going to see how it really plays out. So that is raising quite a few questions, alright? And Blizzard then came out with a further post. A further post to try and clarify some of the questions about Mercenary Mode. So once more, Again, I will give my own opinion on this at the end of it, but I want to bash through this so we get everything from the horse's mouth out first. A few points of clarification based on some discussion we've been seeing around the interwebs. Oh, they're so funny. On racials, the current intention is that the system swaps your race entirely, including your racial ability. We recognise that that puts humans in a weird spot, because they're OP. So we're looking into some options there that aren't spend your honour / conquest on a medallion. Now, this very first sentence to me screams what one of the massive issues is with PvP, which, by the way, when we go further down this paragraph from Blizzard, or this excerpt from Blizzard, they will deny. But I think racial imbalance is causing massive issues, and this is why we saw such a huge defection from the Horde to the Alliance side in PvP, is lots of people grabbing the human racial, every OP for themselves. I'm a human. I'm fully admitting that when, it is a massive OP racial, and going into that. So I think racials have a massive issue to play when it comes to making PvP decisions. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing at all. Now, before anyone says, but a racial doesn't make you a good player, and a racial doesn't improve your skill in PvP, you're absolutely right. You've hit the nail on the head there. Having a racial doesn't, but what a racial does do is it helps. It helps, and the every man for themselves racial is so OP, it's ridiculous. I mean, admittedly, just absolutely ridiculous. So if you put that in the hands of a half-decent PvP player, it becomes a formidable weapon, because it allows them to put the medallion to one side and just get even more powerful than they already are. Moving on. Only the faction that is currently experiencing a long queue... Wait, sorry, I misread that completely. Only the Alliance that is currently experiencing a long queue will have the option to act as a mercenary, and only when those queues reach a certain point, which is still being determined. In the current environment, we expect that to generally be Alliance. Well, at least Blizzard admit it right here. And it's not generally, it's going to be completely, isn't it? Since queues have to reach that threshold before Mercenary Mode becomes available, we don't anticipate an increase in Horde queue times. That would be the worst thing that could happen in this situation, let's face it. Using the Mercenary Mode system is completely opt-in. It's important to us that if you don't choose to participate in Mercenary Mode, it doesn't affect you. Well, it is going to affect you, really, isn't it? Because people who go into and opt into Mercenary Mode are going to go straight into fight. You're still going to be waiting in the current queue time that we likely have, a couple of hours before you go in. So if you don't opt into Mercenary Mode, it's your own fault. Is that what Blizzard is saying? Tough shit. You're still going to be waiting 2 hours when you could get an Instapop queue or a 2-minute queue or whatever it does. Should you be grouped? Oh, for a minute then I thought it said groped. I was getting all excited. Should you be grouped with players who are using the system, they will not be identified to you as mercenaries. They'll look like just another player from your faction. Well, they won't, because they'll be posting in chat that you're all Alliance pigs or you're all Horde scum and stuff like that. And I don't give a shit if we lose, because I'm an Alliance player, so fuck you. Remember when he brought Sense of Eternal Agony, which I like to rename Sense of Eternally Small Penis, into Timeless Isle, and the amount of shit that just happened in the chat with people ganking their own faction. If you expect that there's not going to be, because look, let's face it, the community's piss poor anyway right now. And it's unfortunate because Blizzard have created a system where they reward bad behaviour. You just have to look at LFR for stuff like that. And everywhere you go in the game now, you just gears thrown at you. So it doesn't matter how you act in the game, you're always rewarded. Oh, want to act like a complete tool? Here, have some epics, have some more epics, have some complete and utterly upgraded epics. It's all the same. It doesn't matter. They just constantly reward bad behaviour. So when we get into this situation, of course there's going to be niggles. Of course there's going to be people absolutely announcing that they are members of the opposing faction and we'll see, you know, what that causes, we don't know. If somebody pisses off a Horde member because they've come over to the Alliance, that Horde member could just turn around and go, well, fuck you. I'm actually going to stay in the battleground and just not help you. I'm going to go off and mine or something like that. And therefore turn, you know, if a few people do that, then it, you know, has a situation that we're in now where one side heavily outnumbers the other and smash. So these things are going to happen. Let's not pretend that they're not. Let's not pretend that just because you can't identify a member of the opposing faction that they're not going to identify themselves, or they're not going to cause their own little hoo-has within this new idea. Similarly, it's important to know that these are not trying to create mixed faction scenarios. There will be no humans fighting alongside orcs. Again, our intent is that you are completely unaware that the person next to you is secretly a night elf until they fucking say it in the chat. I think we've just been through that, Blizzard. We don't consider Mercenary Mode to be a replacement for racial balance. Now wait for it. We just also don't think that perfectly balanced racials would instantly resolve queue time issues. No, it wouldn't instantly, but it would go massively towards that. Just think about it. If you are creating a PvP environment, the worst thing that you want is for a person who wants to participate in PvP to say, right, which race is the most powerful? That's the worst situation you can absolutely have, because that person is making their whole PvP judgment off which race is the most powerful. Humans, every man for themselves, yeah, we'll have that. If you took away the racials from the PvP environment, then I know people are going to start crying at me saying, but it's one of the last vestiges of you know, differentiation between the classes. You know, the classes have been so homogenized. This is the one few bastions of hope we have left that separate each and every faction and make them feel individual. Each race, I should say, not faction. And make them feel individual. Well, I'm sorry. I think the time has come to just get rid of that. I'm sorry. But I do. For the greater good. You know, sometimes the greater good has got to prevail, and I think racials, just get rid of them. I know it's an unpopular decision. I'm not touting it as a popular decision, but I think they just need to go. And at least then, if the racials are out of the equation, even if it's just for PvP, even if they just disable them for PvP and they don't come into play in PvP, but you can in the outside world and you can in raids or whatever, then at least people then won't be making their decision based on which race is the most powerful. They might then go, which race looks the coolest, or which faction has the most players, or that kind of stuff. But at least it's a step in the right direction. At least it's not influencing your decision on how you PvP. We also don't think that players should feel forced to faction transfer, potentially away from friends and guildmates, in order to experience reasonable queue times. Well, that doesn't logically make any sense. Why would you go and spend money to faction change to a faction where, although you'll get quicker queue times, you're constantly losing? Doesn't make a lot of sense, really, does it? But this thing that they say about friends and guildmates is kind of going to come back to bite them in the ass in a couple of sentences' time. The picture in the blog is of one of the NPCs that Alliance players can speak to activate Mercenary Mode for Battlegrounds. Players who are using Mercenary Mode won't just be wearing a Hallows End mask. Ultimately, this system's sole purpose is to help resolve the issue where heavy tilts in faction populations can result in excessively long queue times for unrated PvP content. Are you ready for it? Question. Can I queue with my friends that are on the Horde this way, or no? No! Again, its only intent is to alleviate queue times. Right, so if you were to activate Mercenary Mode, it really wouldn't matter if you wanted to play with friends or guildmates, because you couldn't anyway. You can't play in Mercenary Mode with friends or guildmates. It's just random. You can't queue with them, So you only can do it as a personal thing on a personal level to do so. So anyway, let's look at the pros of this idea. Is it a good idea? What are the pros? Well, number one, yeah, I mean, look, if I talk about being a pragmatist a lot, you know, and I have to look at this from a pragmatic point of view. And from a pragmatic point of view, you've got to ask yourself a big question. I don't, because I ain't going to PvP anymore. But if you want to PvP, you got to ask yourself a question. Do you want to just sit in a queue for absolutely ages? Or do you actually want to get on with some PvP and some fighting? And if your answer is, well, I want to fight. I just want to get on in Battleground and fight. I just want to get into Ashran and fight. Said nobody ever. Then Mercenary Mode is going to help. It's as simple as that. It's going to alleviate those queue times. It's going to allow these queue times to really come down, even though you're going to look like a member of the opposing faction. You're going to have the racial of the opposing faction, and in essence, you're fighting for the opposing faction because you're not going to be contributing towards your own achievements. That might be a big issue as well for some people. Sorry, we're talking about the pros, aren't we? I haven't even gotten to the cons. So the pro is that. I don't see any further pros other than that. But there again, this is all Blizzard is saying that it really is just a way to bring down queue times. If we look at the cons of it, I'm not going to go into things like lore. I mean, seriously, is there lore in Battlegrounds? Come on, give us a break. If you want to argue that there's lore in Battlegrounds, I'm just gonna block my ears. La 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 la, I can't hear you. Because we've been doing the same Battlegrounds for 10 years. Whether it's Arathi Basin or Warsong Gulch and all that kind of stuff, those lore, that just doesn't matter anymore. You know, it doesn't matter which BG you're at. The last thing that anyone is thinking when they're lining up ready to charge out the blocks is, my God, I hope the lore in this place is fucking spot on. You know, that's the last thing that anyone's thinking. They're just thinking, Gabby, let me kill something! Let me kill something! So, you know, don't bring lore into it as an argument. I'll just laugh at you and shoo you away. Okay, so lore, no, one side. Let's push that to one side. The biggest problem is this doesn't fix the main intrinsical issue with PvP. Again, I mentioned earlier about racials. I think that has a big part to play. There are other elements as well. But this is a band-aid for a much bigger problem. This is simply to bring down queue times. I can't stress that enough, and nothing really more. Number two, a con, it breaks you up from your friends. I mean, one thing when I did PvP, and another reason why I don't PvP, is because to me, PvP was a social event. It was one of the very few social events that were left in the World of Warcraft outside of raiding. And when your friends aren't raiding anymore, or if you're not doing the raid and you still want to do something social with your friends, there isn't anything really social to do in the outside world, is there? There's no kind of content which is so tough that it demands that you get into a group with people, friends, non-friends. There's none of that anymore. All of that's gone from the game now. So if you want to be social, PvP was one of the last bastions to do so. So I used to like queuing up for Battlegrounds with friends. That's what I love to do. And we'd go into whichever BG it was, and we'd be on Skype, or we might be LANing it, or however we were doing it. And we'd just have a laugh. We'd just have a right laugh. It was normally on Skype. I'm going down to mines. Come and help me. And then we'd come down to mines. Blah, 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 blah. Mercenary Mode is going to break that up. It's going to break up that social element of you with your friends, you with your guildmates. Because you can only queue for you and you alone. Now, if you queue at the same time, so if a group of you queue at the same time, there is a chance you're going to go into the same BG together. Or you're going to get into the same Ashran group together. But it's not an absolute science. It's not a given science. So you may not. And if you're not, bummer. You know? So it's going to start to pull away from those sort of relationships. And to be perfectly honest with you, those sort of relationships are one of the... so important to WoW, really. I think they're one of the last few genuine relationships left. This, for the sake of fighting, is going to take that away. I also think it's going to cause another con. It's also going to cause almighty shit slinging in chat. Just almighty shit slinging. Again, as mentioned earlier, the people who are mercenaries, some of them might keep their mouth shut. They're just there for the honour. They're just there for the conquest. They're just there to try and win, to get their box, because they can't be bothered to buy it all from the auction house. They actually want to do it the hard way, i.e. PvP. So, you know, some of them might just, you know, get into that spirit and say, look, it doesn't matter if I'm Horde. It doesn't matter if I'm Alliance. I just want to fight. I just want to get my rewards. I just want to get out of here or whatnot. But there's going to be a humongous portion that's going to be, I'm a fucking orc. I'm a human, and you're all scum. There's going to be that element, and it's going to be interesting to see whether or not that plays a part. And also, if it does play a part, how are Blizzard going to react to it? What are they going to do? Are they just going to say, fuck it, just let them be arseholes with each other, at least they're fighting? Or are Blizzard actually going to have a consequence? Are they going to pull people out and ban them? Ban them for a day, ban them for 3 days from PvP. So they're blocking them from PvP until they learn how to socially interact with people. Are they going to do any of that? But yeah, don't expect chat to be, hello, I'm Jiminy Cricket from Oxfordshire, and I'm an absolute human. I am so proud and privileged to be fighting alongside the Horde. You know, don't expect too much of that, folks. And also, before Helinka decides to pat himself on the back and break his arm in the process, this isn't even his idea. You know, this isn't like, this is a wonderful idea, Blizzard. It's not even their idea. This idea has been around for a while now. And I'm going to use an example of another MMORPG right now. And that's SWTOR. Star Wars The Old Republic, to people that don't understand what SWTOR is. Now, back in, I think it's 2012. In 2012, Star Wars The Old Republic also had problems with PvP queue times. So what they did is they did it slightly differently. And what they did is they allowed faction to fight faction. So you could go into a BG and you could have Horde versus Horde. You couldn't. You could have Empire versus Empire. You could have Republic versus Republic. Or you could have got a Republic versus Empire. But you can actually fight against your same faction. Now, one of the pros of that, there is a massive con to that. And the massive con to that is, we're fighting against each other. Why? Look, it's a fantasy MMO. You've got to have a suspension of disbelief. You're there for the PvP, really. I know people are like, but I want to kill some, you know, Republic soldiers and stuff. I know that. But essentially, really, at the end of the day, you know, you're there for the PvP. That's what you're really, really intrinsically there for. So that could be construed as a massive con. On the positive side, though, you are still grouped together with your own faction. So you are still in as cohesive a group as you're ever going to get. I mean, if there is an internal bickering, that's just people being dicks, you know? People are dicks all over the place. Dicks everywhere. Splat, splat, splat. But the fact of the matter is, at least you're in a cohesive group. When we look at this one, we're going to have Horde and Alliance, and they're going to be admitting who's who, and there's going to be, you know, there could be a lot more jiggery-pokery going on there. And this was, like I said, 2012. 2012. So this isn't a fresh idea by Blizz. This isn't a new idea with Blizz. This isn't them sitting down and saying, Eureka! I have an issue. I have an idea that is going to resolve the problems of queue times within PvP. No, they've done what they normally do in that they look to other games and they say, oh, look what they did there, and they've pulled from that. And it's not actually going to fix this. Another way, now this is going to, you know, I'm sorry, Helinka, but this, you know, just might be a little bit of a stab at you, Mr. We had to decide whether or not World of Warcraft needed a new battleground, and we decided no, it didn't, because profit share. Well, you know, what about if you create a hot ball-esque type of battleground? Now, if you've played SWTOR and you've PvP'd and you've played Hotball and you want to tell me that Hotball isn't one of the greatest PvP experiences in the world, I'll tell you to fuck off right now. I'll tell you you're a liar, you're an absolute fraud, and then get the fuck out. Because Hotball was one of the funnest experiences in PvP ever. Great concept. What you did is you had a ball. When you were holding the ball, you walked really, really slowly. And then you could throw the ball to other people, and the object was to get the ball from one end to the other, and there were traps all over the battleground, and obviously there was fighting going on in the battleground and all this kind of stuff. And I think whoever scored 3 goals won. It was awesome. It was an almighty frag fest. It was one of the probably the best PvP experience I've ever had in a game. Ever had. Any game. Any MMORPG. Hotball to me was the shits. And the thing about Hotball, and I'm not saying WoW create an exact replica of Hotball, but what I'm saying is one of the beauties of Hotball is essentially you could create a Hotball-esque PvP battleground, and it wouldn't actually matter which faction you belong to. You could be randomly thrown into 2 competing mixed groups of players. This is not how they did it in SWTOR. It was, Republic versus Empire. But this is one of those environments where it's just like, this is kind of like a game as opposed to Battleground. Although there is fighting and killing going on and respawning and all that. But it's one of those events where you could have Horde and Alliance mixed together in a more fun type of Battleground experience. Which has a proper objective goal that is just apart from capture flags, hold flags, PvP. Where it's got some kind of sporting theme to it. In this case, it was hosted by the Hutts, like Jabba the Hutt, those big worm-like creatures. No, I'm not gonna be cruel. Those big worm-like creatures. So you could have had like an ogre having some sort of sport-based frag fest, which could have had actual intermingling of factions and put people together in a mixed battleground experience. I'm not saying this is the way that all battlegrounds should be conducted, but this could have been a one-off experiment to see if it worked. It could have been a one-off experience that just really threw the cat amongst the pigeons, as opposed to just kind of cheap little things like this. Because this is what it is. Let's call a spade a spade. It's just a cheap little fix to bring down queue times, not fixing anything about PvP. But if you had decided to actually create some battlegrounds for Warlords of Draenor, then maybe your creative brain, if you have one, would have allowed you to think about these type of things. To think about the potential to have a mixed-based BG as an experiment that wouldn't involve you having to be in a group of your own faction, where you could be intermingled and you could still be all going towards the same sporting or whatever it is goal to do. I personally think that would have been, a kind of thing. So all in all, Mercenary Mode, is it a good thing? Well, it's a good thing to bring down queue times, but that's all it's going to do. It's not going to do anything else. It's not going to fix PvP. It's not going to do anything like that whatsoever. It's not going to fix the intrinsical problems that we have with the game. And so Alliance, if you you have a big decision here, do you wait for a long time and always win, or do you go for the quick PvP and potentially keep on losing? Remember that you will be going up against a group of probably full on Alliance against a Horde Alliance mixture. So it's going to be quite interesting to see. But let me know what you guys and gals think in the comments down below. And I hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, do give it a thumbs up. And also subscribe to my channel. Follow me on social media and Twitch for live streaming. Those links, they're in the description down below. And I'll be back with some more stuff very soon. You take care, everybody. Bye-bye.